Alright, so without further ado, I would like to introduce our fourth speaker for today, Architect 𝗗𝗓𝗨 of 𝗗𝗓𝗨 Architect. Architect Tan worked in Singapore under RSP Singapore before returning to Penang working with Veritas Architects. She started her own boutique practice, 𝗗𝗓𝗨 Architect, to pursue her belief in honest architecture. She believes good architecture is possible regardless of scale, budget, and complexity. In 2019, the practice became the youngest firm to win gold in the PAM Awards 2019 for Alteration and Addition category for the highly acclaimed Penang Digital Library 2, Library in the Park. The practice continues striving to be inventive and currently pursues special transformative projects in Penang. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Architect 𝗗𝗓𝗨.
Thank you. Hi everyone, how was lunch? Anyone from Penang here? I'm the only one from Penang? Okay. So it's a privilege to be speaking here today. Definitely a dream come true for all of us architects dream of speaking here at DATUM. And I think it's a great introduction by our dear MC. I'm just going to share with you our narrative of kind of like my love affair with architecture and old buildings, rescuing old buildings in Penang. I have about 130 slides and 40 minutes to finish. And afternoon slots probably the most challenging for both sides. So let's try to keep up. Okay, so I started my practice, Beta, as mentioned, is from my own name. And many do not realize the amount of work that I've done before I decided to start my practice. And I started my practice towards quite late of my career. So when Dr. Tan says some of the architects trying to pretend young, I probably feel guilty about it. I'm not very young because when I started my practice, I was already clocking about near to 15 years of experience. And I only need 3 pit stops in my career. My resume is pretty boring. 3 companies and I decided to open shop. So I spent 4 years in Singapore, 2 years back in Penang with a consultant firm, and then move on to be HOD for design development in the design and build developer company. So in that close to 15 years, I strive to do from anything that I can think of. I won't read all the projects here, but I've done so many high-rise, large scale, so the spectrum, I've literally covered almost a lot. But towards the end of that journey, something felt missing. I didn't feel like I've achieved what I dream of doing, meaning I always felt architecture has the power to make the world a better place, as cliche as it sounds. But at the end of that, I just felt the architecture that I've done, was just not really what I wanted, okay? And that's why I decided late into my career, because they say if you don't start, then it's either never and I'm going to regret it. So I give it an all go and start my little boutique, not knowing that it can be pretty difficult. So I made 3 promises. We always need to know our why when we do something. My favorite book, Start With Why, Simon Sinek says that. And then, so I decided, number 1, I want to be honest with myself. From now on, if I'm going to start my own practice, I want to do work that matters to me, that I believe in, not 100%, but 200%. Full honesty on myself, full honesty to the work, and it should be work that make a difference, right? I was quite naive and idealistic at that time, So then the second why that I did, why do I want to start my own practice? I want to kind of like embrace who I am. I grew up in Kampong, working, helping my dad at his sundry shop. So humble and me goes together, and I felt architecture should be humble. And it should not be just for the rich. As you can see in my portfolio, for 15 years, I was designing luxurious stuff. I was doing 8 towers in 8 years, and a lot of the towers are around KLCC here. And then I felt it's still empty when I was just designing for the rich and the luxurious. So I felt, architecture for everyone, it should be inclusive. All right? And the third why was respect. Again, it goes with a bit of a family value, respect the elderly, respect nature. Tadando was my hero during university days. So, and Kengo Kuma. And so the idea of nature first, building second resonates so much with me that I felt if I'm going to start my own practice, then I want to champion this, that whatever architecture that I do, it has to really respect the context, respect the site. Don't pretend who you are not, If you're in a tropical climate, don't design a glass house. So that 3 why started me on this whole very idealistic, enthusiastic journey. I usually don't mention how old I am, so I don't give dates, so that if you guys get the dates, you work out how old I am. So this is pre-beta. Pre-beta means before my practice. This is one of the examples of the work that I was working on. 36-story, 1 unit, 10,000 bungalow in the sky. This is in Penang. So I was getting so good at doing high-rise. I could really kind of like scan the tower and see the schematics of all services into it. And from that level of work and knowledge, I jump into small scale. And this is to scale, yeah? That means the whole tower. And these 2 projects that I'm going to share on is that 2 kind of like my baby projects for my own practice. And it's just a fraction of the work that I'm used to. And this is just one project, and I've done 8 in 8 years before I started practice. So when I did this slide, I wasn't sure whether I should cry or I should laugh because, such extreme XXL and XXS. So I'm going to start my narrative with Penang Digital Library. Probably many of you who have heard, those friends from Penang would know. And what I just want to share is our journey of ups and downs, our heartache, our excitement, and the outcome. So I was told after lunch, about now, everyone gets cozy with a dimmed out light. So I've got a video for everyone, okay? So maybe that can pick up things.
Net lebih laju.
Better reading space.
Berjumpa di library ni dan bincang.
A place to play.
Wow, here I am at the Penang Digital Library, a library in the park. This place has been transformed and it is amazing. I want to congratulate Ms. Tan, the architect, and the project team for transforming an old bungalow into Penang Digital Library 2. We have Penang Digital Library 1 over there, and this is definitely a milestone project for the Penang State.
Okay, so I'm glad that music was a good interface for those spilling in. So I'm going to go faster from this point onwards. So the Penang Digital Library started with a very simple agenda, is to have this idea of having a library without books. Books are in the form of e-books in the cloud. And the location here is in a corner of Penang Free School, oldest school in Asia. And the state started with an experimental bungalow renovation, very basic budget. So this was the whole seed idea. So they transformed this bungalow into a digital library, and where you have high speed, and the students around the school area, there were a lot of schools in around Penang Free School. So the response was overwhelming, and the state decided to upgrade it to 24 hours just to see how the reaction is. To their surprise, students would come in at 11 p.m. with books, to study the night away. And we take things for granted, like we take our internet connectivity at home for granted. And it turns out that there were a lot of students who appreciated this simple facility, free for all, to study the whole night, and they could prepare well. So when Digital Library Phase 1 did so well unexpectedly, so the state government decided to do an expansion, and just to cater for the overwhelming response. And that's how we came into the picture. And the design brief given to us was quite straightforward. Miss Architect just want design more reading space, because obviously the response was overwhelming. Just design more reading space so more can enjoy this simple facility. And number 2, probably add a multi-purpose hall so that it can become like a training room or seminar for the students. So 2 simple brief. But something about public projects inspired me so much, because for years, I was designing luxury work. I was traveling to Maldives. I was doing, really high level design. I was going to Dubai. I was going everywhere, doing so-called world-class architecture. And then suddenly there's this opportunity to bring that experience back to Penang. And out of my own enthusiasm, I advised the client, I think you need more than 2 programs. So as an architect, I came up with a bit more social agenda strategies. So I suggested, look, if we're doing this digital library without books, you need to amp up, and might as well take the opportunity to redefine how library should be in the future. At this point, we all know nobody goes to the library anymore, right? I mean, you go to the public libraries, it's usually quite vacant. So we either meet friends at a cafe. Students nowadays either meet at McDonald's to study. So we started to work with the client and suggest additional programs. Because since you're going to spend the money anyway, why not make it a little bit power-packed, Community hub, put a learning hub, learning activities area, make it an events hub. Whenever there's any community event, everyone goes to the digital library, and a place where family can spend the entire day there. So literally, we were kind of like broadening the spectrum of users from the young to the old. All right, so we were getting a bit too ambitious, and then we say, then we should use this whole project to inspire joy of reading, connect the big disconnect. Everyone is on the handphone. Why not meet face-to-face? This is pre-COVID. And digital inclusion for elderly. So the client was quite surprised and pleased about it. They commissioned an architect, but the architect became a strategic thinker for them instead. And we went to site. This was my first visit on site. This picture was taken. And I was informed, okay, this is the building slated to transform into phase 2. And the client kind of like hinted that there were independent parties that suggested this building is quite run down, vacant for many years. And, Ms. Architect, if you think you need to demolish it, we can consider. So my reaction was no. Penang Free School was my alma mater. I spent 2 years there from 6. And I was like, you need to rescue, the old building. So and as we started to do inspection, the whole bungalow sits in a very lush green space, really beautiful, shady area, and you could hear birds singing, chirping among all the trees. So this was view from the balcony. And that reinforced my idea of, I think we should do a library in the park. Keep all this park, keep all the trees, and keep the building. And looking back, it was as if the building spoke to me. I didn't hear voices at that time, but I was so convinced that that's the only three things that has to stay. The trees has to stay, the old bungalow has to stay, and the concept of the garden has to stay. So, and that in that one visit, there were a few design decisions already made. So then we start to do a massing study because with that tree decision, I didn't realize I created a lot of constraint for myself. And again, I was probably 200% very enthusiastic in this first public project. And so the idea was I wanted the trees to stay and cast a nice shadow in the middle. Yeah, and then I was very sure that the new annex, this is a new annex extension, must not come any further from the existing bungalow. All right, so a little bit of a respect because of the tree promise I made. So, and because of the roof profile, I decided that it should stagger down to another massing and have this cradling effect. So this was done at very, very early stage, sketch up at the very basic. And with that social agenda that we proposed, we moved it. So now a simple reading space became so complex. And I started to regret that, it was all my idea, and now we have so many programs to deal with in one simple site. The site was just 1 acre. So we pack in new reading space, annex, throw in the community hall. It has to be 1 story so that the shadow of the trees cast down to the central lawn. To me, it's very important. I'll show you later on. And the existing mansion, I call it, will need to be rescued, by hook or by crook. In Penang, it's like die must rescue, right? So, and we introduced this public realm of Wisdom Street, kind of like a gesture to connect the existing mansion to the new annex, to make some sense of it, the old and the new, all right? Those days, the heritage bungalow comes with the 7 quarters. So 7 quarters are tucked to the back, connected with a bridge. So the 7 quarters, we then moved to change it into a restaurant because we wanted this an all-day kind of a destination for families, have lunch, and after that go for coding class, things like that. So then I remembered my promise that if I do this round of my own practice, I want to do it right. So it has to be respect. This is phase 1, and phase 2, this is existing, so we can't do anything about the orientation. So to me, it's important that the new annex has to show respect to a lot of things. Respect to the existing bungalow here, and some form of homage to the existing phase 1. So it made a lot of sense when we straddle that floating new annex with a direct parallel facing to the phase 1. So all this was strategized in my mind, even before we draw out the 3D. I guess I was thinking so much, I had a lot of white hair in that first few years of practice. So, I was quite happy with this whole configuration, right? And I'm a bit OCD, or maybe I'm a OCD. So I need to be sure. So I've got my team. We had a few interns in the office. Let's build a model, okay? And build a model, bring it to site. Why? Because I saw the whole possibility of merging shadow play with buildings. So the models was positioned at the right north orientation on site. And we kind of like deduced that it's great that this is morning sun. Morning sun means the Wisdom Street is fully shaded. That means it's going to be great outdoor reading and discussion area. So, and this new annex is oriented to face, it avoids the morning sun. If you look closely, morning sun is here, Okay, these are symbolic of the trees casting in the morning sun, and then the afternoon sun comes the other side. And so we are able to open up this continuous fixed glass looking out to the lawn. Because if you have books in the old libraries, you tend to avoid the UV light. So when there's no books, I was like, why not? Let's open up, open up all the windows. And this whole library in the park, let's bring the garden in. So after making the model, we went to site quite often. I call it the shadow watching. While waiting for the surveyor to come back with the plans, I guess we were really eager beaver at that time. So me and my skeletal team went to site, and that's our project architect kind of like surveying on our own, watching the shadow on site. Why? Because we really want to be sure that we want to create this openness, and we want that shadow to be right designed with it there. So this is the other view. So we kind of like respect, say, okay, all you trees, don't worry, I'm not going to cut you down, you're going to stay, and we're going to figure out how this new annex is going to work. So we are pretty lucky because the client is very supportive, gave us the freedom to explore. And so we came up with this whole final idea of a central lawn because it's very important for buildings to be appreciated with the distance, all right? This kind of foreground and background kind of idea. So, and we like that the central lawn can be an event space. We were, quite romantic. We were thinking movie in the park at night, can do movies here. So all this was curated in this very small 1 acre site, okay? So the floor plans showed a very simple solution. In my years of designing high-rise, I've learned that structural simplicity can save a lot. So when I was working on a public building using public funds, I was really utilizing what I learned doing a high-rise and made sure forms and rooms are literally very rigid. So all these are really the same grid in a repetition way. This is the hall connecting to the annex. This is the mansion. So it's quite a simple plan. Reason because we were given a direction by the client to finish building in 10 months. So again, the design has to be easy to build, fast to complete. So we chose steel construction for that speed and efficiency. And first floor is where we start to play with skylight and voids. And to me, once there's no books, I was really ambitious on bringing lights coming from left, right, top, everything. Okay? Elevation study was also important. We set long hours tweaking the height of the new annex. My criteria is not to overshadow the mansion and keep it simple because I believe in buildings being humble, right? And so nothing fancy, so we can finish fast. And most importantly, it is timeless, right? It won't go out of style. So at least you can kind of like stretch the money spent. So once the schematic was agreed on, we start to develop. SketchUp was our go-to software, but our SketchUps are like 100% accurate to really simulate basic things in a very fast way. So we started to develop shading devices, blades and fins, because we knew where the north and east and west sun were going to be. And we already start to imagine which view that the building will look great, which is the signature angle, all this even before the construction start. So to me, it's very important architects need to imagine how the buildings is perceived at early stage. Right? So this is my personal way of work that I need to make sure that it looks good in proportion before we go for full detail. So this turbulent journey of construction, we need to complete fast, yet there's so many constraints, and the constraint didn't come from the client, but came from myself because I was so overly excited about it. So I have to kind of like be accountable and nail it. So before construction, there were literally problems and problems of saving an old house, a whole bungalow. And I start to understand why there are other third parties that recommended, why not you just demolish it, because it's beyond rescue. So I started to feel like, oh, it's all my own fault, but I was still adamant. I said no, because libraries are about stories to tell. And what stories are you going to tell when you tell the young viewer that there used to be an old bungalow here that we demolished? So, I made a promise and I was adamant to keep it. There was asbestos ceiling on site that we decided to remove, for health reasons. And cosmetically, we felt the roof trusses looked okay, but we couldn't inspect them because we couldn't get a contractor to come on board. But when we talked to our structural engineer, the engineer felt strongly that from a residential bungalow to convert to a public building, probably a 7,500 pegs to go upstairs, the floor joists need to be strengthened. There's no other way around it. And we fought hard with engineers, and we kind of concluded in the end, it's probably better for public safety, because the floor joists were quite not in that strong, not in a good condition. So the engineer redesigned the whole support in steel members. So again, I used to do this when I was doing high-rise, where I coordinate all the beam structure, and it becomes second nature. So for a 2-story building, I got my team, I taught them how to do it, and we massaged the members. We went back and forth with Arup and negotiated sizes that I felt is more faithful to the original floor joist. That's the least I can do. So this was drawn by us, not by the structural engineer, because I could read plans very, very confidently. So I said, I think we need to draw this out. Why? Because these joists are going to be exposed. So because we wanted to just strengthen the whole floor structure. So further down the road, as the construction started, we discovered more problems, more assumptions that turned out to be worse than expected. So there were constantly struggle on, do we keep this or do we just demolish this? So that's why I call it, it's really a turbulent journey during the site. And as the roofers start to go up to the roof, so our worst fears came true. The roof trusses were all worse damaged than what we imagined. Termite infestation, outside looks all right, but when we removed them, you could put your hand in a hollow hole, okay? Because it was that bad. So we went through the whole painful process of bringing down the roof truss, lay it on the ground, and choose, because we were so adamant to try to keep as many timber roof truss that we can find to keep. So the contractor was quite supportive. So, and in the end, we couldn't really, a lot of damage was already there. So probably it was just half that we could retain. So this is a look of how our attention to detail was really controlled before they fabricate and do it on site. So I was kind of quite sure that it's going to be all right. Okay, and this is a look during construction. This is how it will be. We left it exposed and going to paint finish so that we want it to look, and no one will know or suspect that it's actually steel structure supported. Like grandma has steel bones now. So, and fast forward to completion photos, we are quite happy with the outcome. And these are all the steel members that we worked so hard on. We even divide the distance with the engineer. I size it so that make sure the beams and the corners and everything falls in place. So, and it's starting to show us, our labor of love starts to get a lot of rewarding vistas, as we walk around. And this is the view from the mansion through that peephole porch looking out to the annex. And we were starting to feel that it was really a good thing that we pushed the annex back, that the new annex never felt overpowering to the existing mansion. And we kept it clean because there was a budget to meet, right? And all this has a purpose. Show you a bit of photo to tour around. And this is one of my favorite photos. This is usually about 8. I go to site so often during those days, I will literally know if 8 a.m., the shadow will cast that much because of the tree relationship. And if by 11, that lawn will no longer be shaded. So I just felt such amazing beauty of nature in play. And this is the shadow casted by the trees. As it goes higher, the shadow will start to recede. And the best time to see this place fully shaded is around 8 a.m. to 9. And you can sit here on the lawn enjoying the shade. So it's like, enjoy the trees, but there's no trees on the lawn. And the expression of the annex, to me, why didn't we use pitch roof? But we felt that we wanted it clean, humble, and kind of like disappear to the background. So we like that it kind of complements in an old and new way without too much of fighting elements. So we were very careful on how the two messing meet. A lot of time was spent on detailing, coordination on site, wanting to meet it perfect. So the contractor was quite pleased. They managed to achieve what we envisioned. But I was speaking like, this is, it should have been perfect, overlapping each other. So that's a longer story. And this is the outcome of my kind of like a theory that I imagine that if we play with the right orientation and the louvers, then we'll get this really beautiful dancing shadows, and it's free of charge because it's nature and sun, and it doesn't cost a dent in the budget. So I was like, why not? So true enough, it's really nice to go around this corridor of the new annex. Again, this is morning sun, and then this is around 2 because as it goes higher, the shadow casts this way, and then over here is about 5. So I come so often just to stand there and watch the shadows. I guess my love affair with my work. And so the completion for the annex, once it was open, it was really a good response from the public. Everyone starts to come, and this is my student. So I bring them here for studio and having a session here. And these are area by area of how we transform the mansion into a really calming and inspiring place to study. So this is the other wing. This used to be the kitchen, the dining room, okay? So we decided that if it was used to be a dining room, then we use a dining table height to study, okay? The one before was a living room. And we say, okay, for living room, then we use a sofa setting for study. Me and my grand ideas, I am always, more will be great. So we went all the way to list down the art of reading. So in this one small project, you could probably list there's 7 or 8 ways of reading. You can slowly pick them up. So then we wanted to make sure there's area for group discussion. In this new way, library, the visitors are allowed to speak. There's no such thing as, you can't talk. So we encourage brainstorming discussion by having all these booths. These are transformed from the balcony. If you look at this key plan, originally it was the veranda of the bungalow. So what we did was we kind of like reversed. So the bedroom partitions was removed, and then the veranda became a semi-enclosure for reading, okay? And this was the bedroom, made open to like an open concept with study corrals. I love going to libraries during my uni days, and I really like that I could bring back all these old school ideas and as many ways to study as possible, okay? Yeah, this is the corridor. And so Wisdom Street as a public ramp from the servant quarters. I'll go a little bit faster after this. And library without books meant a lot of natural light in the spaces, playroom for the children. And most of the first-time visitors will get surprised because they never thought library could be this well-lit and natural light during the day. So I created void, skylights, and it becomes a really pleasant place to study. And we had this linear skylight where we line louvers around it. Then again, shadows, and we know what time the shadows will come at 12. And for 12 to 1, we have this amazing accidental shadow of words bounce off on the floor. This was not planned. It was on the wall of the brainstorming room. And we got a bit surprised and really excited during the construction. Like, it does bounce off the words on the ground. So there's 3 brainstorming rooms that we did. Every room had a word, dream, think, create. And this will appear. If you're there in the digital library, if you're not aware, suddenly the word will appear for an hour or so and then they'll disappear. So this is reading booth, Windows Bay Windows reading. One of my favorite again. So even the bathrooms are in open concept. This is our views of when the public are using it to the brim. Those days before COVID, even before the library opens, the students are already lining up to go in. So it really pure reward of joy when I see our work gets appreciated by public. And this was that something missing that I was searching for. And once complete, again, I use it as my tool to show my students. And this is that part of being a teacher that I enjoy. So Penang Harmony Center. Now, it's another public building, and we always love a social agenda in a public building. And this project is all about space sharing. The client had a lot of queries by groups of religious like association in Penang. You have a lot of Hokkien association, you have the Sikh, you have the church group asking for funds to build hall, to build event spaces. Everyone was asking for support. So the state came up with this grand idea, like co-working space. Why not just do a hall space sharing space for the cultural and religious group? So that's how Harmony Center came about. So we love the whole novelty and the whole innovation of this very sustainable way. Instead of building 10, 20 halls, build one, get all the cultural association groups to work around the calendar in the year and use it with a minimum fee. So the brief, again, was need one community hall, 200 pax, budget 2.5 million. So we say, 2.5 million, we must max it out. So I say you need to have meeting space, you have learning space, events, and administration. So we really find problem and find trouble for ourselves. So this was the site slated for the Harmony Center. 1 acre, vast greenery, small, very Malay architecture, rumah kampung style, 4,300 square feet, completed in 1880. This is a category 2 heritage building. Means we cannot demolish it, so we have to restore it. And suddenly that 2.5 million didn't feel enough. So, and we started to realize that this lady here is 138-year-old, and we probably have to be really gentle and careful working around her. So the adaptive reuse project started with the site visit. This is my first entrance into the middle zone. Immediately instincts come flooding in. I don't know why it always happens to me, but I just have all these ideas like, this is no good. Poor ventilation, poor lighting, can't see the outside. Beautiful green outside, but not a single window. So everything has to open up, I was just making mental notes. And again, with that first site visit, I went back with a few design decisions already made, cast in stone, non-compromise. Yeah, thanks. And so how do you intervene with a new hall? We had a few options tossed by the client. What about the front? I said, no, you're going to block the bungalow. It's heritage. What about the side? No, it's too tight. It's not going to go down well. What about the back? No, we have to save the trees. There's palm trees. And, they were starting to feel that this architect gets a little bit too dramatically romantic and obsessed with saving trees. And then what about the other side? I was like, this is too tight for construction logistic. What about the front? I said, definitely no, unless you do a glass box. So we eventually settled with alongside of the existing bungalow because we wanted to tuck below the lush trees. So that's 200 packs of hall and save the mansion and build the hall. Pretty straightforward, right? But again, we make things difficult for ourselves. We will detail everything, and we kind of like open up the whole central spine, made it natural vent, and then all these studs were retained. Timber walls were removed because my eyes wanted to look out to the green. And we parked the 200 packs hall by the side. This is how the floor plan looks. So again, I felt the hall was more like a tissue box proportion when we scale it up in SketchUp. I said we cannot do a tissue box hall next to a very elegant house, right? So we went on to detail the side wall. I call it the accordion wall. It's not something new. So one side of the zigzag has wall, and then the other one is window. So we kind of made sure we stretched that 2.5 million to the max. That's why I said, we are not afraid of budget or complexity. So if you want to do good design, there's a will, there's a way. So, that's, I guess, be careful of what you wish for. So we have this 2.5 million to test our belief. So when we were designing the new hall, we went with very straightforward kind of a study of the proportion. Okay, existing to the new, bring over, literally copy, paste in AutoCAD. Very straightforward. And my only rule to my design team was make sure it is not higher than the existing tip. And so we developed this elevation, old and new, side by side. I wanted to make sure that the new building is as articulated as well as the old building. So passive lighting, because of the tight budget, I wanted daylight, zero artificial lighting throughout the day. So we created a central skylight, which brings down light to both sides of the mansion. And then the accordion walls and also openings at the top brings illuminance to the hall, okay? And we also did a light shelf. Light shelf is also very straightforward, but not commonly seen. But I said, well, let's give it a go. And for ventilation, we open up the existing timber floor. Before we had the intervention was covered up with carpet. So that meant the floor couldn't breathe. So we removed the carpet, restored the floorboard. So, heat-wise, you could have this passive cooling for both new and old. And again, I wanted to make sure the aircon is as hidden as possible. So we worked with our M&E engineer. I said, can you do something of a plenum box? We do this in high-rise. So again, I was bringing high-rise stuff and put it into a 2-story simple building. I said, okay, give me one plenum box, supply air, return air, can you do that? And he said, okay, sure, that's easy. And that's how we kind of like strategize all this direction in one simple hall. And the other section will also show how the tunnel effect will just bring through the ventilation throughout the house. So I'm just going to take you through the tour of shot by shot. And this is how the outcome is. And we like that the roof proportion is very sensitive, especially at this shot, a very harmonious play of up and down. One journalist came and said, is the hall the old building? And I was quite happy to hear that, because you can't tell which is old and new. And the open veranda used to be closed with grills, and we remove it. Natural vent, original elements was restored carefully. We were very glad that the contractor believed in what we wanted to achieve. The reception, and this is the view of the skylight. Skylight provides a really great glow in the central zone. And it took a lot of standing on site, looking up, because we couldn't see until the roofers opened up. So I was going to many rounds to detail on site and get my team to draw up the details. So visual connectivity was what I envisioned. And over here, left and right, from front to the end, you could see the gardens, you could see the outside. Finally, I felt my eyes feel good when I walked in. I was like, yeah, this is how it should be. And the original rooms were opened up. We created a function room. The original floorboards restored. These are the windows that we open up to bring the green. Those are existing trees, to bring them in. Meeting room, again, windows. Nothing difficult, but it was just a bit of a determination to get all this come in. So these are linear skylight that we've integrated. There's no lightings on the ceiling because the client didn't want the hassle of going up to maintain. And then my response was, oh, very easy. Don't have any lights up there. And what about aircon? Is all at low level, left and right. So the ceiling is clean and cost saving. All this was cost saving strategy. So we frame up views of the tree, the glass vision. All this was through a lot of sidewalks and catching the moment. The contractor was about to break it up. I said, no, I think you should stop. I think we should preserve that. Run back to the office, change the drawing, give another new instruction, find another place to put all your bricks. So it is to that extent of commitment. But we were doing this because we wanted to really prove that 2.5 million could really come out well. Okay, so these are glows that, as you can see, through the hall. And it's really nice to feel, it's really how it looks like in picture. A lot of events were held after it opened in November. And we are really glad that all these efforts are paying off. So these are, again, a secret garden at the back. All these trees, the tall trees are existing. And because of all the money and expenses going around the hall detailing, there was not much left. I said, okay, then the tiles in the bathroom, we omit, we do cement render. So we just splash some color and then the cement render walls. So it was that frugal of how we stretch things for this project. And so at night, we wanted it to glow and make it work within the budget. So it finally opened in November 14. And shortly then after its pandemic, but it was great response. We had the clients' support to be the first party to test out the place. And we had our 𝗗𝗔𝗧𝗨𝗠 event, and friends came. 𝗗𝗔𝗧𝗨𝗠 is like our gathering in Penang. And I invited speakers, designers, and then we had this major mini party, like housewarming. So finally, I felt, yeah, this is what I think I would like to continue doing, that enjoy my architecture, even though there's ups and downs, heartache, tears, and joy. So really a twisted love affair that I have with my architecture. So we are really glad that all that effort pays off with recognition from PAM and other awards. So during COVID, I was told that we need to mention a little bit about COVID reflection. Everything, the whole world stopped, and we were riding high on our so-called successful completion. Suddenly, everything stopped. So I start to go within and appreciate the people around, appreciate my team, appreciate my students, because I felt my students make me a better architect. I felt obliged to do good work. What would my students say? She preach about good design, but she doesn't do it. So I felt grateful for all these people that I have around. This is my family. When we were completing, my son is taller than me now. That was like that fast, time flies. And my last slide, this is my motto since young. Dare to dream, the sky is the limit. And I want to share this with everyone that, whether you're a young architect or struggling, going to go burn out architect, don't give up, okay? Because the sky is the limit. And believe, feel the power of architecture. As cliche as it sounds, but I certainly hope that if we all work together, architecture, good architecture can really make a difference. Thank you.